Welcome to my YouTube channel. Rain lashed against the cracked pavement, blurring the glow of the streetlights until everything looked like a watercolor of chaos. The night smelled of smoke, gasoline, and fear. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, too far away to matter. Alina pressed herself against the cold metal of a car door, her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape. Her fingers were slick with rain, trembling around the grip of her gun. Every breath came shallow, fogging in the cold air. She hadn't signed up for this. Not exactly. When she joined the undercover unit 2 years ago, she thought she could handle anything. Drug rings, smuggling routes, corruption at the highest level. But this was different. This was the Moretti family. The kind of people who didn't leave loose ends, and she had somehow become one. "Stay down," Alina hissed over her shoulder, her voice sharp but calm enough to hide the panic clawing at her chest. The girl crouched behind her, the boss's daughter, nodded frantically, her mascara running down her pale face. Leah Moretti couldn't have been older than 21, but she looked like a child now, small and shaking, clutching her knees as bullets tore through the night around them. It wasn't supposed to go this way. Alina had spent months infiltrating the Moretti world under a false identity, working as Leah's private security. The plan was simple: gather evidence, get close, and when the time came, hand everything over to the feds. But plans never survived first contact with gunfire. The ambush came out of nowhere. One moment they were leaving a gala in the heart of Manhattan, laughter and champagne still hanging in the air, and the next, headlights, screeching tires, gunmen in masks. Alina reacted on instinct, shoving Leah behind the nearest car as bullets sparked against concrete. She returned fire once, twice, ducked low, felt the sting of glass slicing her arm. The shooters were professionals, fast and coordinated. They wanted Leah dead. A round hit the hood of the car with a metallic scream. Alina cursed under her breath, glancing around for an escape. The alley was narrow, walled in on both sides. The rain made everything slick and unforgiving. If they ran, they'd be open targets. If they stayed, they'd be trapped. She caught a glimpse of one gunman circling toward the side, moving fast. She fired, hit him in the shoulder. He dropped his weapon, collapsing behind a dumpster. One down, at least 4 more. "Leah," she said, her tone firm, commanding. "Listen to me. You're going to crawl toward that door behind the dumpster. Don't look back. Don't stop until I say so." Leah's lips trembled. "You'll come with me, right?" Alina forced a tight smile, trying to sound steady. "Of course." "Now go!" The girl hesitated, then began crawling, her sequined gown dragging through mud and glass. Alina turned back toward the open street, heart pounding. Shadows moved between the beams of headlights. She could feel them closing in. Her pulse roared in her ears, drowning out everything else. She fired again, missed, then ducked as a bullet whizzed past her cheek. Pain flared in her shoulder, a sharp, hot burst that knocked her backward. She gasped, clutching the wound. The world tilted, spinning between flashes of lightning and the smell of blood. But when she looked up, she saw one of the gunmen aiming straight for Leah. Without thinking, without hesitation, Alina pushed herself up and threw her body between them. The shot came. It felt like fire ripping through her side. Her knees buckled, but she stayed upright, shielding the girl. The impact drove the breath from her lungs, but she didn't let go. Not until she heard the click of an empty magazine and the sound of retreating footsteps. The gunfire stopped. Silence fell, broken only by the relentless drumming of rain. Alina swayed, one hand pressed to her bleeding shoulder. Leah was sobbing quietly, her voice hoarse with terror. Alina crouched beside her, breathing through the pain. "It's okay," she whispered, though nothing about this was okay. "You're safe now. Just breathe, Leah. You're safe." She could taste blood in her mouth, metallic and bitter. Her vision blurred at the edges. black creeping in like ink on wet paper. She had to stay conscious, had to make sure no one came back. The girl's safety depended on it. Somewhere far away, the sound of an engine roared to life and then faded. The attackers were gone. For now. Alina let herself lean against the car, blinking hard to stay awake. Every muscle trembled from adrenaline and blood loss. She thought of her cover, of the mission, of the risks she'd taken to get here. All of it could end tonight. If she died here, the feds would never know what she'd uncovered. The hidden accounts, the list of names, the truth about who the Morettis were working with. But as she looked at Leah, curled up and crying in the mud, none of that seemed to matter. This girl wasn't a criminal. She was just a frightened kid trapped in her father's empire. And Alina, despite all her training, all her orders, couldn't bring herself to let her die. Her radio crackled weakly at her belt, static. Then a voice, male, deep, cold, echoed faintly through the device. "Where is she?" Alina froze. That voice. She'd heard it before. Dante Moretti, the man himself. Her heart clenched. If he found her here, bleeding beside his daughter, everything would spiral out of control. She wasn't ready to face him. Not like this. Not after all the lies she'd told to get close to his family. But then she heard Leah cry out softly, "Daddy?" And that single word sealed her fate. The sound of heavy footsteps filled the alley, boots splashing through puddles. Alina's eyes darted toward the shadows. Men in suits, armed and expressionless, fanned out in formation. Then, through the rain, he appeared. Dante Moretti looked like he'd walked straight out of a storm. His tailored coat clung to his broad shoulders, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, and his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, cut through the darkness like knives. He didn't look surprised. He looked furious. He didn't even glance at his men. His attention went straight to Leah, then to Alina. His expression shifted, confusion flickering beneath the rage. He saw the blood, the bullet hole, the way Alina's body was still positioned between him and his daughter. For a second, neither of them spoke. Rain filled the silence, drumming against the metal and concrete around them. Alina forced herself to stand, even as pain screamed through her body. She met his gaze with defiance, refusing to look weak. "She's safe," she said quietly, voice rough. "I kept her safe." Dante stepped closer, slow and deliberate, his shoes splashing in the puddles. He stopped just inches from her, towering above. "You took a bullet," he said flatly, his tone unreadable. "For my daughter." Alina swallowed hard, blood trickling down her arm. It was part of the job. Something flickered in his eyes, something almost human. He reached out, hesitated, then pressed his hand firmly against her wound to stop the bleeding. She flinched at the pain but didn't pull away. "You're losing blood," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. "You'll die if we don't move now." "I've had worse," she muttered, forcing a shaky smile. His jaw tightened. "Liar." Behind them, Leah clung to her father's coat, sobbing. "She saved me, Daddy. She didn't let them hurt me." Alina's knees gave out then, her strength finally gone. Dante caught her before she hit the ground, his arms sliding beneath her shoulders. His touch was surprisingly gentle for a man who'd built an empire on violence. As her vision dimmed, Alina caught one last glimpse of his face, anger, relief, confusion, all tangled together in his eyes. The last thing she heard before everything went black was his voice, low and rough against her ear. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "But you'll live. I'll make sure of it." And for the first time in her life, Alina didn't know if she'd just saved a life, or bound herself to the devil forever. The sound of steady beeping filled the sterile air, soft and rhythmic like a heartbeat fighting to hold on. Alina's eyelids fluttered open, vision swimming in a haze of white light and blurred silhouettes. The scent of antiseptic and rain lingered faintly around her. For a moment she didn't know where she was. Her body felt heavy, her arms strapped with wires and IV lines. Pain pulsed through her shoulder like a dull fire, reminding her of what had happened. The gunfire, the girl, the man. Then it all came rushing back, the bullets, the blood, and Dante Moretti's face hovering over her before everything went black. She tried to sit up, but the movement sent agony tearing through her side. A sharp voice cut through the quiet. "Don't move." The command was low, firm, and unmistakably authoritative. Her vision focused, and there he was, leaning against the far wall, dressed in black, his posture still as stone. Dante Moretti, the man everyone feared. His presence filled the room like a shadow that refused to leave. He looked exhausted, though he'd never admit it. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his tie loosened, and there was a dark stain on his cuff. Her blood, she realized. His gaze locked onto her with unnerving intensity, as if he'd been watching her for hours, waiting for her to wake. Alina swallowed, her throat dry. "Where's Leah?" Dante's eyes softened just slightly, the only hint of warmth on his otherwise unreadable face. "She's safe," he said. "Sleeping upstairs." Relief washed through her body, but it was quickly replaced by suspicion. "You brought me here?" He didn't answer right away. He moved closer instead, his footsteps measured, echoing softly on the marble floor. When he stopped beside her bed, she could see the faint bruise on his jaw, the bloodshot redness in his eyes. This was not a man used to feeling helpless. "You were bleeding out when I found you," he said finally. "If I'd waited another 5 minutes, you'd be dead." Alina's lips curved faintly, though it hurt to smile. Didn't think the infamous Dante Moretti cared about saving people. His jaw tightened at her tone. "I don't," he said coldly. "But you saved my daughter. That changes things." The words hung between them like smoke. He said it without emotion. But there was something else there. Something she couldn't read. Gratitude? Guilt? She couldn't tell. All she knew was that this man, the one she'd spent months investigating from the shadows, was now standing at her bedside, watching her like she was something fragile. She shifted slightly, grimacing at the pain. "Your men attacked us," she said quietly. "They knew where we were. That means someone in your circle sold you out." His eyes narrowed. "You seem to know a lot for a bodyguard." Alina froze. Her cover story. Damn it, she needed to be careful. "It's my job to notice things," she said quickly. "You hired me to protect Leah, that's what I did." He studied her for a long moment, silent. It felt like he could see right through her, peel back every lie she'd ever told. "You weren't hired by me," he said at last, his voice low. "You were recommended by someone who's now missing." "Convenient, isn't it?" Alina's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I'm asking," he replied, stepping even closer, "who you really work for." Her breath caught. The tension between them was palpable, electric. She could smell the faint trace of rain on his coat, see the fine lines near his eyes from sleepless nights. She knew if she said the wrong thing, she'd never leave this mansion alive. "I work for your daughter," she said carefully. "I took a bullet for her. That should tell you everything you need to know." For a second, silence. Then, to her surprise, he laughed, a short, quiet sound, more disbelief than amusement. "You've got nerve," he murmured. "Most people tremble when they stand this close to me." "You talk back." Alina met his gaze head on. "Maybe that's why she trusts me." Something flickered in his eyes again. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a silver pendant on a broken chain. She wouldn't let this go, he said softly. Said you gave it to her. Alina stared at it, her heart twisting. It was a tiny angel charm, dented from the fall. She had given it to Leah minutes before the attack, telling her it was for luck.
Seeing it now in Dante's hand felt strange, intimate, almost. She said you told her monsters deserve to keep what they love, he added, his tone unreadable.
Why did you say that? Alina hesitated. Because everyone has something worth saving, she said finally. Even people who've done terrible things. Dante's expression hardened, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of something deeper. You think I'm a monster? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He turned away, walking to the window. The rain had stopped, leaving streaks of light from the city reflected in the glass. My world isn't one you walk away from easily, Alina, he said quietly. You should have left her. You should have saved yourself. I couldn't, she said simply. He looked back at her, his expression unreadable. For the first time, there was no threat in his gaze, just confusion. Maybe even admiration. You don't even know us, he said, almost to himself. You didn't have to do it. She smiled faintly. Maybe I didn't, but I did anyway. The air grew heavier. He moved closer again, slower this time, his voice lower. You risked everything, he said. You bled for someone you barely knew. No one does that for me. Not even my own men. His eyes searched hers, and for a heartbeat, she saw the man beneath the legend. The father, the protector, the man who built walls around his heart, so nothing could touch him. But something about her had gotten through. She didn't know what to say. Words felt too fragile for the weight of the moment. He exhaled sharply, breaking the tension. You're lucky you're still alive, he muttered, stepping back. My doctor said the bullet missed your artery by less than an inch. Guess luck likes me, she said softly. Or maybe someone upstairs does, he replied, glancing toward the ceiling where his daughter slept. The edge in his voice was gone now, replaced by something quieter, something that almost sounded like gratitude. He poured a glass of water from the table and handed it to her. When she reached out, their fingers brushed. It was a fleeting touch, but it lingered like an electric current neither could ignore. Alina drank slowly, watching him over the rim of the glass. So what happens now? She asked. You rest, he said simply. My men will find out who did this. When I have answers, I'll deal with them. And me? He paused, his gaze steady. You stay here until I decide what to do with you. She couldn't tell if it was a threat or a promise. As he turned to leave, she said quietly, Dante. He stopped at the door. You don't owe me anything, she said. He looked back, and the way he said her name, low, deliberate, full of something unspoken, made her heartbeat falter. That's where you're wrong, Alina, he said softly. I owe you everything. And then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click. She lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning. She'd seen death in his eyes, but also something else, something far more dangerous. Gratitude, connection. Maybe even a hint of humanity he didn't want anyone to see. Her mission had been to expose him, to bring down the Moretti Empire from the inside. But now, lying there in his home, saved by his hands, she wasn't sure who was saving whom anymore. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, echoing like a warning. Alina closed her eyes, and for the first time since she'd gone undercover, she felt the lines between right and wrong begin to blur. She had taken a bullet for his daughter. Now the question was whether she could survive what came next. Being this close to the most dangerous man in New York, a man who whispered that he owed her his life, but whose world could destroy her the moment she let her guard down. And somewhere deep inside, though she would never admit it out loud, she already knew she was in more danger from the way he looked at her than from any bullet that had ever been fired. Morning sunlight poured through the tall windows like gold spilling across marble, soft and warm compared to the stormy night before. Alina blinked against it, squinting as her vision adjusted. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then the scent of roses and faint cigar smoke hit her senses, grounding her back to reality. The Moretti estate. Her heart tightened. The last thing she remembered was Dante's voice, low and rough, promising she would live. She had wanted to believe it was a dream, but now the silk sheets, the soft hum of distant voices, and the echo of footsteps down the hall told her it wasn't. Her shoulder ached dully beneath the bandages, but she could move her arm now. Someone had changed the dressing while she slept. Someone gentle. The thought unsettled her more than the wound itself. She swung her leg slowly off the bed, careful not to rip the IV from her arm. The room was vast, too beautiful for someone like her. All soft cream and dark wood, with a chandelier glittering faintly above. A tray sat on the table nearby. Water, soup, bread. She hadn't eaten in nearly a day. Still, her instincts told her to be cautious. This wasn't a hospital. It was a lion's den, and she was lying in the lion's bed. The door creaked open before she could stand. A maid entered quietly, carrying fresh linens. She froze when she saw Alina awake, nearly dropping them. "Oh, Miss Russo," she stammered. "You shouldn't be moving yet," Mr. Moretti said. "I'm fine." Alina cut her off softly, though she wasn't. The name Miss Russo made her stomach twist. Her fake identity. The one she'd built to infiltrate this world. The maid's nervousness confirmed what she already knew. Everyone in this house feared Dante Moretti. As if summoned by thought, his voice carried from the hallway. "Leave us." The maid bowed her head and vanished instantly, closing the door behind her. Alina looked up. Dante stood in the doorway, dressed in black again, his jacket undone, a faint shadow of stubble on his jaw. His presence filled the space effortlessly. He looked less like a man and more like something carved from shadow and control. "You should be resting," he said quietly, walking toward her. "I've rested enough," she replied, trying to sound steady. "You didn't have to lock me in." His lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. "You're not locked in. You're protected. That's what people say before they take away someone's choices," she said. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze sharp. "You really don't know when to keep quiet, do you?" "Not when I'm being held by the man I was investigating," she said before she could stop herself. His expression flickered, just barely, but she saw it. Surprise, suspicion, then something darker. "Investigating?" he repeated, his tone dangerously low. Alina froze. She'd said too much. She tried to recover. "I meant observing," she said quickly. "Keeping Leah safe means observing threats. That's all." He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing, searching hers for lies. She could feel his presence like heat against her skin. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met," he murmured, "or the stupidest." "Maybe both," she whispered. Silence stretched between them, heavy and unspoken. The sunlight caught the scar at his temple, the one she'd read about in his file, a reminder of the night his brother was killed. She realized then that behind his coldness, there was pain buried deep, sealed away beneath years of power and blood. He moved toward the window, lighting a cigarette, though he didn't smoke it. I've been asking questions, he said finally. The men who attacked us, they weren't from any of my rival families. Someone wanted Leah dead for another reason. Someone who knew where she'd be. Alina's mind raced. Could it be one of the informants? Someone from the inside? The feds had promised her this operation would be clean, that no one would get caught in crossfire. Now she wasn't so sure. He turned back to her. Do you know what happens to people who betray me? She met his gaze without flinching. I imagine it's not pleasant. No, he said softly. It isn't, but I don't think you betrayed me. You had the chance to run. You didn't. His words caught her off guard. Why does that surprise you? Because loyalty is bought in my world, he said. But you gave it freely. I didn't do it for you, she said. He nodded slowly. No, you did it for her, and that's why I can't decide what to do with you. He moved closer again, the space between them shrinking until she could see the faint pulse at his throat, the tension in his jaw. You confuse me, Alina. You risked your life for my daughter. You look at me like I'm both your enemy and someone you want to understand. You make me question things I don't question. Her breath caught. What do you want from me, Dante? He leaned down slightly, his voice a whisper that brushed against her skin. The truth. Her pulse thundered in her chest. She wanted to tell him everything, that she wasn't Miss Russo, that she was working for the government, that she was supposed to bring him down, not save his child. But looking into his eyes, she couldn't. Not yet. There was something dangerous in his gaze, yes, but also something deeply human. Something that scared her more than any threat he could make. I already told you the truth, she said softly. I did my job. He studied her for a long moment, then reached out. His hand brushed the side of her neck, gentle, testing. You're not like anyone I've met, he said. You should hate me, but you don't. Maybe I do, she whispered. Then why do you look at me like that? She didn't answer. She couldn't. The air between them was charged, too fragile to break. For a moment, he looked like he might kiss her, but instead, he stepped back, his voice low and rough. You'll stay here until I find out who's behind this, he said. No arguments. And if I say no, then I'll tie you to that bed, he said, his tone half a threat, half something else entirely. She glared at him. You think you can control everyone around you? He looked at her quietly, then said, No, just the ones I can't afford to lose. Her anger faltered. He turned and walked toward the door, pausing just before leaving. Leah's been asking for you, he said. She won't sleep without knowing you're all right. Alina's chest tightened. She's a good kid, she murmured. She trusts you, he said. More than she trusts me. His voice softened, barely above a whisper. You gave her something I couldn't. When he left, the room felt colder. She sat there for a long time, staring at the door, trying to slow her racing heart. Every instinct told her to run. She had the evidence she needed hidden in a flash drive tucked inside her jacket in the adjoining closet. One call to her handler, and the FBI would have Dante Moretti in chains by morning. But her hands trembled as she reached for the phone, because she wasn't sure anymore if she wanted him in chains. The memory of his voice, the way he'd said, I owe you everything, haunted her. She'd seen the way he held Leah that night, the way his entire facade cracked when he saw his daughter bleeding and afraid. Maybe there was more to him than the headlines said. Or maybe she was just fooling herself. Hours passed. The sun dipped below the horizon, and soft orange light bathed the room. She was still staring at the phone when the door opened again. Dante stood there, his expression unreadable, holding a glass of wine. You haven't eaten, he said quietly. I wasn't hungry. He set the glass down on the table beside her and sat across from her, his movements slow, deliberate. You look like someone fighting a war in her head. Maybe I am. He leaned back, studying her. You could leave, you know. I wouldn't stop you, but you won't. Her throat tightened. Why wouldn't I? Because part of you wants to know if the monster you were told about is real, he said. And the other part wants to believe he isn't. His words hit harder than she expected. She looked away, afraid of what he might see in her eyes. Maybe I just want to make sure Leah's safe. She will be, he said, because you're here. When she looked back, he wasn't cold anymore. The walls were down. For the first time, she saw him not as the untouchable Mafia Boss, but as a man, flawed, dangerous, but still human. He reached for her hand, his touch tentative, almost reverent. You didn't just save my daughter, Alina, he whispered. You saved me, her breath caught. The words she'd once imagined hearing sounded nothing like this, quiet, raw, honest. And when he said, I owe you my life, she realized the truth she'd been avoiding all along. She hadn't just stepped into his world. She had become part of it, and there was no walking away from it now.